In 2023, the quarterback that I'm targeting the most at his ADP is Justin Fields. Last season, he flashed some pretty ridiculous upside, and he did so with arguably the league's worst combination of offensive line and receiving core. Justin Fields was the quarterback 5 in fantasy points per game, and this offseason, the team made a huge investment in the offense around him. The Bears are operating as if Fields is their franchise quarterback moving forward, and now it's up to him to live up to that hype. First things first, the offense in 2022 really played to Fields' strengths, and that's why I'm glad to see Getsy coming back this season. The vast majority of this offense consisted of runs, RPOs, and short passes, and while that did result in some really low passing volume for Fields, it was pretty much the only style of offense that this offensive line and quarterback could execute at the time. Now, make no mistake, Fields can sling the ball around if he's given a good pocket and if he can stick to his footwork. He is absolutely capable of working through a progression, making the right read, and delivering an accurate pass. The problem is, his offensive line was not usually capable of holding up in any kind of traditional dropback. So Getsy played to their strengths. A lot of the passes were quick by nature, either an RPO or a single read quick pass or a screen. But if Fields was holding the ball longer than that, it was almost always in a rollout, a sprint out, or a bootleg. Moving the pocket around was a good way to limit the liability of the offensive line, and it also opened the door for Fields to put his talents to use. Fields is great at extending plays, especially when he's in those moving pocket scenarios. He can use his legs to buy extra time while also keeping his eyes downfield to look for a late throw. His calling card so far in his young career has been the ability to make something out of nothing, and it seems to be a part of his identity as a quarterback by now. I think we can expect to continue to see him play this style throughout his career, even if it does get him into trouble sometimes. Some of his worst throws of the past season came when he was flushed out of the pocket or under pressure, looking to salvage the play and using sloppy footwork. Specifically, when Fields doesn't have his feet set on a throw, he's really prone to overthrowing his target, and it can get him into some seriously ugly throws. However, you can't just rein in that improvisational nature because it's a huge part of what makes Fields a special player in the first place. He is an elite scrambler, and he already has a highlight reel of completely improvised running plays that a bunch of running backs would be jealous of. Something that you can't really quantify, but it definitely stands out in the film, is just how smooth Fields is as a runner. He always moves as though he has another gear available to him, but that's not to say that he looks slow. It looks as though he's never really hurrying himself or panicking, and it leads to some silky smooth moves out in the open field. He's just a really creative runner overall, and he has good vision, so he can set up downfield blocks pretty well. It also helps that the Bears are constantly asking their wide receivers and tight ends to block, so they're more than capable of staying active downfield to help squeeze out those extra yards. And of course, Fields shined the most when the Bears purposely called his number, and the design runs were the biggest game changer for Fields in terms of fantasy football. Fields saw double-digit carries in 7 games last season, not counting the monsoon game in week 1, and in those 7 games, he averaged 26.6 fantasy points. He had the second most carries by any quarterback, only behind Jalen Hurts, and he turned those carries into nearly 1,200 rushing yards, easily winning the quarterback rushing title and finishing 7th in the overall rushing title. His 7.2 yards per carry was the best by any player in 2022. However, he also led all players in total fumbles with a whopping 17. Overall, Fields is an elite runner who shows serious upside in his passing ability, even if he hasn't quite tapped into it fully. Like it or not, that kind of quarterback archetype is becoming a lot more common in the NFL, and we've already seen what the development process looked like for other elite dual threat quarterbacks. The Bears have shored up their offensive line and added a special talent at wide receiver. That sure seems like the formula for quarterbacks to take a step forward, and think about what a step forward would mean based on last season. Fields just posted a top 5 season for fantasy while suffering the highest sack rate of any quarterback since 1997. The last time a quarterback had a higher sack rate was in 1997. For some context, Justin Fields wasn't even born until 2 years after that. Now, some of those sacks were definitely on him, but most were not. I'm assuming that with the offseason moves, this O-line can improve from historically bad, and we can finally see what kind of ceiling Fields really has.